Well, that didn't go as expected. Honestly, I'm pretty speechless about the whole thing, and I'm still recovering from this whole ordeal, which is why this video took so long to come out in the first place. However, despite my still fragile state, I wanted to come here to talk about my experience in the hopes that others don't find themselves in a similar situation. With that being said, I'm gonna take a seat because this is gonna be tough for me. Hello my darlings, and welcome to my little corner of the internet, where today's going to be a little different. For those that haven't followed my route to bottom surgery, there are a couple of videos up on my channel about that, but know that I've spent a whole year preparing for this surgery and have spent even longer thinking about it. Unfortunately, on the 20th November 2025, the day before I was supposed to go under, I was taken into the office of Dr. Bank, my 2B surgeon at the Suporn Clinic, and was told that they could not proceed with my surgery. To really convey the impact that this decision had on me, I want to start from the beginning of my trip. However, if you're purely just interested in the reason, you can skip to this time. For those who are still here, I'll try my best to be concise. I left the UK on the night of the 17th of November, and after an 11-hour flight, I arrived the day after in Bangkok, Thailand. I was exhausted, nervous, but really excited. I found the free transport that I had organised with the clinic, and then we made our way to Ratanachol Hotel. Things were slowly starting to feel real. This was happening. Usually as a passenger I can barely stay awake, but the excitement kept me awake for pretty much the whole trip, despite the 11-hour flight. After arriving in the hotel and settling in a bit, I introduced myself to a group of patients that I saw, and I was greeted with such lovely support, confirming that I was in the right place and that this surgery was the right thing for me. The day after, the 19th, were my medical tests. This included a physical examination of my equipment by Dr. Bank, and then some general tests down at the hospital where I was accompanied by an absolutely lovely nurse. All went well, and I even had plenty of time to do some shopping for some last minute items for my recovery whilst I was still mobile. And with that, it was one less day and the anticipation was growing. And then the day of admission, the 20th. I packed everything in the morning and then spent the rest of my time with the other patients before leaving, even saying goodbye to those who will have left before I had been discharged. After arriving at the hospital, I was greeted by a nurse who took my blood pressure and asked me about any allergies or any dietary requirements, and then told me to wait for the psychiatrist. I started to unpack a few bits and pieces, and then sure enough, she arrived. We had a brief chat about my transness, my transition, my desire for the surgery, as well as my mental health history and my support network. She was very sweet, complimenting my skin and my face, and when she left, she seemed really happy. A little bit later, the anaesthetist arrived, I signed some consent forms and answered some more medical questions. And then something out the ordinary happened. I received a call from the clinic telling me that transport was on its way to take me to go and see Dr. Bank. So I messaged a friend that I had made to ask if this was normal, and she told me that Dr. Bank does usually see the patient the night before, but in the hospital. So to ease my worries, I tried to tell myself that he must have just been held up in the clinic and couldn't come to the hospital that night. However, once I arrived and was invited into his office, it was clear that things were not okay. I took a seat, holding on to what little hope I could muster, and then Dr. Bank explained to me that although my body was healthy, the psychiatrist had deemed me not mentally stable enough for recovery. With my final ounce of hope, I asked if I could talk to her more so she could better understand me and my situation and hopefully allow me to have the surgery the following week. But that's when the hammer fell. I was told that I would not be able to undergo surgery this trip, and that it had been postponed by at least 6 months. With all hope lost, I broke, and I was unable to speak properly for the rest of the day. I was taken back to the hospital where I hastily packed up all my things, and I was then taken back to the hotel. Not wanting to be alone, I went and sat with all of the other patients who had already received their surgery, hugging Pinky, my oldest plushie, in silence, receiving what support they could give me. If any of those who I met are watching this, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am so thankful for all of the support you gave me, despite what a tough time you were all going through too. Now, before I can explain the why, I do need to give a content warning. I will be talking about self-harm, so if that is triggering to you, please reach out to others or hotlines if you need to. You are never alone, and there are other ways to cope. Please keep yourself safe. So, what I've neglected to mention in the story so far is the looks and comments I received from nurses, as well as one of the big talking points with the psychiatrist. During my mental health struggles as a teenager, I unfortunately turned to self-harm as a coping mechanism. I have received a lot of help and support for this over the years. I've spent a lot of time in therapy, and I even took a year out of my university studies to focus on getting better. However, despite all the help and effort, this still remains a struggle for me. I was clean for 6 years between 2017 to 2023, and then was clean again until late 2025. The stress and emotions of leaving my home, leaving behind my pets and friends, and leaving behind my job, it all got to me, and I relapsed. I should have called a hotline, I should have called a friend, I should have done so many other things, but I didn't, and I regret that greatly. To try and avoid any further relapse, I'd planned my recovery to be as supported by others as possible. I would have a support person with me almost the whole time in Thailand, and I would make friends with other patients and their support people so I would never feel alone. I'd quit my job and I'd moved back in with my mum to ensure that she would be around to support me the most she could possibly be. Even with me explaining this detailed plan to ensure that I would be safe during recovery, the injuries from my last relapse were still visible to the nurses and psychiatrist, and evidently that raised too many red flags. I can't claim to know the reasons why the psychiatrist came to the conclusion that she did. However, I know that the fact that I wasn't receiving any medical treatment played an important role. It wasn't because I didn't want any medication or therapy that I wasn't receiving any. I've taken medication in the past, and in fact, for the first half of 2025, I was seeing a psychologist. However, access to these wasn't that simple for me. Due to delays and issues with my Canadian work permit, I wasn't able to access the public health system to be able to see a doctor for a prescription, and I couldn't afford to see one privately because I was saving money for the surgery, the recovery, and all the costs around it. And frankly, I didn't think it was worth it. I thought I was handling things reasonably well, and I was up until a month or two before my move, at which point it felt too late to find a doctor. And as for therapy, I stopped seeing my psychologist because I felt like he wasn't the right fit for me and was actually making me feel worse. I did try to find a new therapist, but I couldn't find anyone suitable in time. Either their waitlists were too long or they just weren't accepting new patients. And thus, by the time I was in Thailand, I found myself without any medical support for my mental health struggles. So this is where I agree with the decision that was made, even if I don't agree with it. I don't believe that the psychologist was able to make an accurate analysis of my mental health in the barely 20 minutes that we had for that meeting. But I understand that my first impressions are bad, and the clinic themselves admitted that they are not able to provide adequate mental health support in the case of a mental crisis. So, despite me being sure that I wouldn't have one, it's impossible to prove that, and the clinic doesn't want to take the risk. I've also since found out that 2025 was a tough year for the clinic, and they did have a few instances of mental health crises. It is a major surgery with a really difficult and long recovery, and post-op depression is real. So to avoid further incidents, I do believe that the clinic has tightened their mental health requirements. And whilst I understand this, I can't help but feel that this postponement has taken more of a mental and emotional toll on me than I can imagine surgery ever doing. Part of the control over my own life and my own body that I had been slowly gaining through transition was taken away from me in that one decision, and it broke me in a way that I'm still recovering from. It reignited the flames of self-doubt, and now all of the plans that I put in place for recovery serve as a constant reminder of that decision that was taken away from me. It's heartbreaking and disappointing in a way that is impossible to express with words. So, where do I go from here? I'll give the clinic full credit that they have offered me either a full refund or a postponement. Currently, I have left my money with the clinic, so I am able to contact them in the future to arrange a date for my surgery once I have fulfilled the extra requirements that they have given me. I must have a letter from a psychiatrist confirming that my mental health is stable and ready for surgery, as well as I must be clean from self-harm for at least 6 months. I'm currently looking into ways to ensure this, but it's not easy. I've essentially planned the next 2 years of my life without a break long enough for surgery recovery. So it could end up longer than that before I am able to have this surgery that I was so excited for, which is so hard to accept. However, I am going to seek out support to once again address my underlying mental health struggles, to relearn better coping strategies to avoid a future relapse, as well as how to cope with the new challenges and emotions that have arisen with this postponement. Things did not go to plan, but that's just how life goes sometimes. I am still grieving the life I thought I'd be living right now and would be living from now onwards, but I am picking myself up and moving forward because I still have a life to live. If you're worried about this happening to you, I don't think it's likely. There were multiple unfortunate circumstances that led to this unfortunate decision, but I do encourage everyone who struggles with mental health to seek out some form of medical support. And if the threat of being denied life-changing surgery is enough to motivate you to reach out to someone or to seek out and learn new, healthier coping mechanisms, then that is some form of positive outcome of this awful experience. I will once again leave links in the description to hotlines that I urge you to use, and I hope that me speaking about this can help you reach out for help when you need it. I understand that it's easy to feel shame around these topics, but you are deserving of help, care, and support. If you do struggle with these things and you do want bottom surgery, I would possibly just recommend getting your therapist to write an extra letter detailing the care and treatment you are receiving, just to give the clinic extra peace of mind. And as for me, I will continue to do my best to try and stay optimistic and look forward to a time when I will be more comfortable in my body, even if that does take longer than I expected. I will seek out support, and I will put in more time and effort into focusing on myself, giving myself time to grieve and feel all the emotions I need to in order to move on. For all those out there struggling, and to myself, it gets better. Life has its ups and downs. We do have our struggles that we have to work through, and we do have to put in the effort to get better. But the sun will rise again. There are setbacks, and recovery is not a straight line, so it's important to get back up and keep on fighting. I don't plan on giving up, and I don't want you to either. Thank you so much for reaching the end of this video. I know it's been a long time since my last one, and this definitely is not how I wanted to start the new year, but it's just how it goes sometimes. My New Year's resolution, in fact, is to be more consistent with my uploads, so feel free to give a like and a comment to encourage me with that, and subscribe if you want to come along with me on this journey. I promise that the other videos are usually cheerier than this. And if you do want to hear more from me, feel free to follow me on Blue Sky. But otherwise, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.